but it said it was handled outside the public. In other words,
Also known
somebody got a
as
check.
private settlement.
Private settlement. Welcome back to Under Oath. Problems in the workplace. People overworked. Hurting themselves, hurting others. Discuss.
That is a problem.
Can an employer be responsible for the death of his employee or somebody that employee hurt? That's what we're talking about here.
All right. So if we're going to analyze this on a legal program, it makes sense to apply the law as we understand it, right? We're talking about negligence. So
Duty. I have a duty to protect.
do the employers have a duty based on something that requires their behavior, right? So there has to be something. So the relationship is an employee-employer relationship. So an employer gets to decide when you work, where you work, how long you work, and what the conditions are while you're working. So, yeah, I think there's a duty there for an employer to take some basic considerations into account when
What would be the basic considerations?
Well, the working conditions would be a basic one.
You
Like,
work
are
8
you
hours.
working over?
8 hours. Let's say
you
8
working
hours.
on the very top rung of a ladder for multiple hours? Well, you might expect that people will fall quite frequently in your place, or something like that.
But I'm paying you. I pay you overtime.
Yeah, but you're paying them to get a job done. You're not paying them to take the risk for you.
For example, hospital. Hospitals have overtime, long shifts all the time. Sometimes they make these people work. The doctors in there sometimes work 24-hour shifts, especially the residents. You know, how can you expect anybody to be able to drive home safely after working 24 hours straight?
Yeah, I don't know that you can necessarily expect somebody to drive home safely after forcing them to work 24 hours. That is a good topic, I think, that needs to be explored by these folks who run their businesses.
I mean, there's a nurse in Ohio, for example, Beth Jasper, in 2013, after working multiple long shifts, got in a car accident and died. Now, there's no, how can I put it, direct answer to the lawsuit, but it said it was handled outside the public. In other words,
Also known
somebody got a
as
check.
private settlement.
Private settlement. Now, you still have hospitals all around the country
That
working
one's tough,
residents and
though.
people.
That's not a great example for
Why?
what I'm talking about, because there's so many X factors in that particular incident. What caused the accident? If she got hit by a drunk driver, man, I got to tell you, it doesn't matter how many hours she was working. If it was the other driver's fault or partially the
But
other
if it's her
driver's fault,
fault, if it's 100% her fault,
because she fell asleep, I mean, you would have to be able to prove that she fell asleep. And I don't know how you necessarily
well, we
do
can
that.
agree that her faculties are definitely not going to be there after being up for 24 straight hours.
Yeah, you probably can make an argument that your normal faculties are impaired once you are deprived of enough sleep.
Now, this happens on sets all around the country. For example, there's
Well, you got to also take into consideration, if you're going to consider who the employer is, you also have to consider who the employee is. And a nurse, I think, is going to get more protection than what I think you're going to lead into, and that is actors and actresses.
why? What actors and actors are different than nurses, that they should be able to stay awake more. I mean, they're human beings. You work them for 24 hours. They're up for 24 hours. Now, let's say they're not even working. I'm just sitting in this chair with you for 24 straight hours. Hey, eating donuts.
Yeah,
doing
I think the way to make that work is to look at the risk versus reward. So I'm paying a nurse probably what most nurses get.
Oh, so money.
So money does play a factor in determining whether or not the employee has the means to do something about the conditions. So if I'm paying somebody $1 million to shoot a movie, well, you need to take some of your money, and if you're tired on a particular day, hire your driver, all right? That's what you need to do. The employee is not immune from examination. But if it's a nurse and she's not going to be able to afford those kinds of accommodations, then the employer needs to look out for her. So I know people hate when lawyers say it depends, but it really does. It depends on who the employee is and what they're getting paid to do.
So how much
and
money?
who the employer.
How much money? Should
You probably have to base it off on what the average income for that particular state or industry is.
Okay.
If you're getting compensated, if that nurse was hey, listen, We have a huge shortage of nurses,
And they get paid well.
and you know how to do this.
Nurses get paid
We're going to give
stupid
you
money.
$60,000 a month.
They get lots of money.
We're going to give you $60,000
Your
a
daughter's
month.
a nurse,
We
right?
normally pay like $1,200 a week. We're going to get $2,500 a week. We're going to give you $60,000
Your
a month
daughter's a nurse, right?
She is, yes.
Does she ever talk about how the salaries of nurses are pretty high now?
Yeah. She makes decent money.
So more than, let's say, a paralegal makes.
Yeah, I think so.
So nurses are actually high paid professional jobs now.
Correct, but they're being but you're looking at what nurses get generally. So she wasn't generally making more than the average typical nurse,
They have
unless it was an emergency situation. If that happened during COVID and they gave her a bunch of extra money, well, then she does need to take responsibility to make arrangements to have people pick her up. I'm going to be too tired to drive. Yeah, I voluntarily signed up for this job that I know I'm going to be working multiple 18-hour shifts. I'm not going to be getting the kind of sleep I need to get or I'm accustomed to. So I need to make arrangements, and I can because I'm getting compensated for it.
change the fact a little bit. It's the employee who caused the accident. The person who she hits wants to go, wait a minute, you overworked this person. Does that change the fact pattern any?
To bring a claim for the person that the nurse hit?
Yeah.
No, I think all of that same analysis still applies.
You and I both know we would go full bore on that one without even thinking about it.
If you're saying that we
Without
can
even
make
thinking
the
about it.
argument fit the circumstances, then yes, that's true.
No, that's an easy argument to make. Anytime you work somebody over a certain amount of hours. Now, I know a little bit about the entertainment industry. A lot of things happen. For example, on that set of your favorite actors, Alec Baldwin set, Rust. Was it Rusk or Rust? I think it was
Rust.
Okay. The first issue they had on that set was people were upset that they had to drive the distances they were driving. And people were falling asleep. They were, that was the first time they tried to revolt against the group. Now, they're also saying that the girl who was found responsible, and, Alec is still in trial, but the girl they found responsible for being irresponsible on the set, because listen, I was just brought on because I was cheap. I wasn't really that qualified to do this job.
How qualified do you have to be to take the gun, look at it, and determine whether or not there's a bullet in it? What sort of special education does that require?
There's a lot of training.
I don't care how tired you are.
No, there's being a weapons master. Oh yeah.
I'm not saying what it takes to be a weapons master. I'm taking what does it take to go grab a particular gun that has a bullet in it and discover, oh, hey, there's a bullet in this.
Do you know something? There's no way there was a bullet on that set. No way. These are prop guns.
Are you falling into that conspiracy theory? Like somebody put it there?
Yeah.
So that she would be killed?
Oh yeah. That would be like us coming into this office and somehow there are bullets and a gun under your chair. Who would have put that there? On a movie set, Sam did it. No,
Sam raised her hand.
Here's the thing with that. I've been on many sets. I did Miami Vice, 30 years ago. And I was Officer Goodwin. The gun couldn't fire. I had a holster, everything else like that. There's no way there's a live round on any set because you're not shooting these guns. These are prop guns. These aren't meant to be fired.
Well, they're real guns, but
some of them are even soldered.
Okay.
They really don't want that. But the fact is this, that these guns have never shot a real bullet. They've never supposed to. They're not like, hey, listen, we need some guns for the set. Just go to the range and get some. That's not the way it works. It's a huge issue. They have a trailer. These are the guns. We don't go, hey, Bobby, we're going to go shoot some hog with your guns later. No, we don't have live rounds. There's never a point to have a live round. So how did this live round get on the set? That's what I want to know. See? Most people who get shot on sets, it's the blank that goes into your head. There's a little piece of the blank that sometimes projects out 3 or 4 feet, but they're always blanks. This time, a live round. And if I was Alec Baldwin's attorney, I'd be the first one going, listen, I'm an actor. The reason why.
No, that's not going to work in this situation.
It will work for a specific.
He was also a producer.
Oh, yeah? You know what a producer is? It's a credit.
Well, if you don't want credit you don't want responsibility,
Anybody,
you don't get credit without taking responsibility.
I just met with somebody the other day who explained what a producer was. He goes, I don't even know. I got 8 guys. His attorney
Our
argues.
producer is rolling her eyes right now.
Not her. She's working. Okay. I'm talking the average. You have 50 of these guys. One of them goes, I talked to Bob and I made sure I got credit. it doesn't give you responsibility. What are your actions? Now, here's the rule that on every set, and I've
I
been on
disagree philosophically. You
okay,
are going to take a
okay.
credit for being a producer.
Of
You
course
are
they are. So
responsible.
every producer should have been on the murder list.
Sure.
You're
I'm
the
fine with that.
murderer?
I'm fine with that. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Yep. You're
no.
responsible for what happens on the set. Yep, absolutely.
Oh, so everyone was
If
charged, or
that
only
was a
Alec
business,
Baldwin?
if that was AT&T and AT&T was shooting an in-house commercial and they're like, "Hey, for some reason we want to have an AT&T commercial where somebody's shooting guns," and they did it all in-house. Yeah, every single boss that was
Every boss is, and they're put on the
involved in
lawsuit.
that
And they're put on
commercial
the lawsuit.
yes, absolutely.
Never, never, ever, ever, ever. But here's the thing: there's a rule that everybody on a set knows, and every actor can pretend they're geniuses. And you know the ones I'm talking about. They go, "We never put a gun. We never put a knife in an actor's hand. That's why they're all rubber. We don't trust them because they'll screw around with them. So many guys have cut themselves, hurt themselves, murdered themselves on the set that these guys who have that job, they go, we're never going to hand these guys a live weapon ever because they don't pay attention because their job is, oh, we're doing.
That might be the general rule. That can't be true for every single movie. That
Ask any guy who does a movie, and they will tell you never put a weapon in an actor's hands.
they do it all.
No, that's a rule. That's like never put an attorney
That's a
on
rule
a jury.
like don't pass on a double yellow line.
No.
People still do it.
No, that's a rule like don't put
What do
an
you mean
attorney on a jury. That's
Oh, and people still do it, as you well know. As you well know.
And we agree that it very rarely happens because it's a stupid thing. And that's what a weapons master normally does.
Well, Alec Baldwin didn't kill somebody because he was overworked and too tired and didn't realize what he was doing. Are you saying that the quote, what you describe as a weapons master, she was too tired and that's the reason
that was her argument.
she made a mistake?
That was her argument. She was overworking. She was overworked. She was undertrained and everything else like that. But she took that job. Her father really trained her to do it, or somebody in her family trained her. And the claim is that she wasn't trained well enough to do that job. And they probably hired her and paid her that price because she was willing to take less.
Made in court all the time that
Yeah.
aren't realistic, and not knowing how to check a gun to see if it's loaded or not. Then you're saying you got no training. You got no training. If your training didn't include checking to see if a gun is loaded, what you're basically saying is I got no training.
All right. Truck drivers falling asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, now that's a legitimate issue where the employer has to take into account what they're doing to their employee. Not only what they're doing to their employee in terms of the employee's health, but what they're doing to their employee in terms of what happens if the actually foreseeable thing happens from him getting overworked and he falls asleep. What happens to other people?
But they have rules now. You can't drive. You have to stop a minimum of certain hours. You got to do this. In fact, we have a trucking case where where they tried to get the guy. They go, "Oh, did you have the right amount of sleep?" "Oh yeah, I checked in at something. I fell,
Yeah, you're talking about the liar's log.
Yeah,
where they handwrite in how long they slept.
Oh, you think everyone's following the liar's log, especially with companies? I'm not talking like private guys. I'm not talking your Smoking the Bandit stuff. I'm talking about a guy who works for a specific company.
I think the big companies overlook the fact that their drivers are cheating the log.
So you think everyone's lying about their log?
A liar's log is here's what I mean when I say a liar's log. So when you get pulled over and you're a professional truck driver, my dad's a professional truck driver, so that's how I know a little bit more than you.
Well, let's not say your father
so
does a liar's log for benefit, okay?
So you get pulled over, and one of the things that you can be asked to show the officer, besides your driver's license, insurance, and all that other stuff, is your sleep log. So you are required to keep a sleep log and show how many hours of sleep you've gotten for each of the previous 7 or 8, 10 days, however long they want to go back. And if they ask for it, you have to hand it to them. And notoriously, these guys will say, yeah, I slept 8 hours. It'll be the same number, just written down one after another after another. Yeah, Monday, 8 hours, sure. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. And they fill it all out, probably in advance, because they know it's got to say at least 8. And when the officer sees that, then he doesn't really have any reason to take them into custody for failing to keep a log. Because you can actually be taken into custody for you can actually be removed from driving. I don't think they can take you into custody, but they can refuse to let you operate that semi in their state if you don't have a log. You have to
Does the officer
demonstrate.
actually say liar's log when he?
I
I
don't
need your
think. I
liar's
think
log,
he
please.
knows what it's the common term is used. That's what people call it, but that's probably not what law enforcement calls it. But anyway,
How many truckers are going to write in and tell
yeah,
us
they all cheat, Jeff.
they don't?
They all
don't. No, they don't. There are very good drivers out there. This is a very limited group of people. We are not getting sued because Craig's saying that all truckers do this.
There is a huge incentive for them to cheat because they get paid per mile. So the more miles they can get in a day, the more money they make. But if you're sleeping 8 hours, that's 8 hours of you not being able to drive. No one's really checking to see if it's physically possible for them to have slept 8 hours and get the distances they go.
Oh, they do in lawsuits.
Yes, that's when people come in and they do the calculations and say, well, hold on. If you slept, like you say, 8 hours, that means you only had 16 hours of driving. Let's assume you're Superman and you don't need to stop for any bathroom break or eat. That gives you 16 hours to drive at 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour if you're doing the speed limit.
I think this is old school.
You can't get that far.
I think this is old school stuff you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
I had a new, we have a younger driver. He's like 24, 25 we represent. And this guy was like, no, you absolutely have to do this. And it was locked in. There was no way he was cheating the system. He was looking clearly because he worked for a company. He's got to report that. I think everyone expectation now, because of what lawyers do, I think it's a lot harder, especially with GPS too. A lot of these trucks are GPS. They know how long they've been driving. They know when they started.
Well, you have technology now that makes it impossible for them to cheat that if the trucking company will use it.
You know, especially people always ask what lawyers do. And believe it or not, it's not us sitting around eating lobster 24/7. Only about 8 hours of the day. No, I'm kidding. What it is about is simply is that when somebody is performing wrong and they're doing stuff for greed and everything else like that, they will stop doing greedy stuff if they have to write a check for it. And if somebody loses a life because somebody wanted an extra mile or two that day, because they're going to get fired by the trucking company who doesn't want them to violate a law. And imagine you're talking about speeding too. Oh, I'm doing 85 instead of 75 with a truck that takes 8.5 at 80 miles an hour. That's 8 seconds it takes to stop that car from beginning to end. And the idea behind it is you're going to kill people over this. People are going to die. It was like Mothers Against Drunk Driving the same way. We made the penalties for drunk driving so big because this group of people came out and said, we are not going to tolerate it anymore. So I think there's a line to it. It scares me a little bit. I know what sets are like. And when you talk about the $1 million guy, when I did Miami Vice, I was getting paid $40. Don Johnson was getting $250,000 an episode. There's a difference between us or a sub character who's getting 60 to 70. So you never know what that person is and what his responsibility is. A nurse who works a 24-hour shift, that's not unusual. We know that's not unusual because they do it. Now, if you limit the amount, then you're going to go, well, we have to shut our hospitals down because we don't have enough people.
Well, some jobs you have to work a 24-hour shift, and the way they account for that is they give you 2 days off right afterwards. The problem is employers should understand if you ask somebody to work multiple 24-hour shifts in a row, that you necessarily are affecting not only your employees' health, but your clients, patients, or people out on the road.
You know what we should do one time? We should do a test. We should stay up 24 hours, just sit in the office, BS and everything else, fight to sleep, and then take one of these cognitive tests and see whether we would fail or pass. And I guarantee we would fail.
I don't think after 24, probably 48 it would take.
I'll tell you what, I've been up.
Well, you 12 hours, me probably 60 or 70 hours.
Oh, you think 24 you'd pass a basic cognitive test?
Yeah, not a problem. I've actually stayed up 24 hours before.
When was the last time you did
I know
that?
you have.
When was the last time you did?
College.
Dude, you're old now. You don't get to say college.
Why don't I get to say college?
Did you think you drank as well as you drink? You think you drink better now, or you?
Oh, I probably drink better then, yeah.
Yeah,
but I was up for 24 hours.
Oh, you think physically?
I remember being perfectly fine the next day.
You know, stuff doesn't work now. Where you go, ooh. The same thing works with your brain. Your brain does not get better over time. We tend to do less stupid
Oh,
things.
no, it does get better over time. You get wiser, you get more intelligent.
No, we just choose to not do dumb
I
things.
got so smart, I developed an extra tumor to hold the intelligence. How about that?
Your second brain? What is this?
Yes, I was growing a second one. That's how smart I was.
Yeah.
But they took that out, so now
Except you had the big lump in your head for like 8 months and didn't, hey, maybe I should check this out. Yeah, that was intelligence. That's the problem.
That's true. I should have been a little bit more.
We think our mortality is different.
Reactive.
I don't exercise. It takes me longer to recover. Your brain's the same way. Your brain doesn't get stronger as you get older. You just don't do dumber. You go, wait a minute, I got been burned. That's an experience issue. That's not your brain functioning better.
Oh,
That's you
okay.
going.
All right. Well, there might be something
last
to that.
time I did that.
I'll give you that one.
Now I jumped out of that airplane about a year ago.
Yeah,
about
you
this
can't
time.
tell me your brain was working fine when you decided to jump
I
out
want
of
you to know
that
something. My brain was definitely different than when I first did it because I'm going, I shouldn't do this. I really should do it. When I was younger, what the hell? Now I'm sitting there going, I'm going to die. I didn't die, but at least I evaluated, unlike when I was a kid, and I go, yeah, this seems to make sense to me. So that's just the way that worked out. So I think when it comes down to it.
So you agree, we can, in some circumstances, hold the employer responsible? Yes? You agree with me?
I think in a case where the employee was responsible for the actions, I think it's pretty easy when you've overworked somebody. And
you're talking about that third person getting hurt by the driving nurse, right?
Yeah. And I think it's also important for the other person too.
Yeah. Does the nurse have a claim, though, against the employer?
I think they do. I think anytime I put somebody in a position where they're going to be hurt and I don't care, oh, well, they'll handle it.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll figure out a way to get home. I think you have a responsibility when you force somebody to work
But
a certain amount of hours.
do you also agree with me that the more you pay that person, the less your responsibility becomes?
No. No, I don't.
Because sometimes there's emergency situations present themselves.
Here's $1 million. You died. Okay, well, I paid.
No, I don't want you to die. I don't want you to drive while you're impaired. I don't want that, but I do want you to work 43 hours in a row.
But I didn't try to even make sure that you weren't doing it. I know that you shouldn't be leaving. You shouldn't be driving out of here after working 24 hours, even if it's
Well, you know,
it's
it's interesting because they have a law that maybe it's Stacy's or Kelly's or Amber's law or something like that. But in Florida, if you get arrested for DUI, even if you bail out, they still have to hold you for, I think it's 8 hours.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to explore there for employers. Hey, if you're going to have your employee work more than whatever we want to call it, X hours, then you have to make arrangements for private transportation as part of
or allow them to sleep there for 8 hours. In the end, it's pretty simple. If the issue is a clear, rational, logical one, for example, I keep somebody up for 24 hours, it's a coin flip whether they get in an accident or not. I mean, that's just rational.